So the UFC is back in Vegas for another fight night. We've got Marina Rodriguez and Amanda Lemos in the main event. This was originally supposed to be Bryce Mitchell taking on Movsar Evloev. Of course, that fight no longer happening, and Mitchell's going to be taking on Ilia Topuria, I think, in December. But now we've got Marina Rodriguez and Amanda Lemos stepping into the main event spot. We've got 13 fights on this card. Your co-main event, Neil Magny, Daniel Rodriguez, really good fight. And then you also got a really good matchup between Mark Madsen and Grant Dawson on this one as well. And then, of course, the hyped up prospect in Jaitan Almeida is having another fight at heavyweight on this card as well. So we'll get into it, man. 13 fights on this card. And folks, if you haven't yet, make sure that subscribe button down below for some more UFC here on the channel. All right, first fight, Ramona Pascual taking on Tamaris Vidal. It will be Vidal's first fight in the UFC. She is 6-1, coming off an LFA victory in her last fight by heel hook in the second round. For Vidal, some good jiu-jitsu skills. She's good on the ground. She has a win over Martina Jindrova, of course, the PFL's own Jindrova, who just lost to Kayla Harrison in the playoffs. But Vidal's not, she's not great, but she's not horrible. This fight against Pascual will be at 135, considering Pascual's first couple fights in the UFC have both been at featherweight. She will be going down to 135 for this fight. But it was kind of interesting how they brought Pascual in the UFC, because she really hadn't really beaten anybody. I picked her to beat Jocelyn Edwards. Now, should I have done that? No, because Ramona Pascual is just kind of just a punching bag at this point. That's really what she is. Her takedown defense, isn't bad, but the thing is, not many people will attempt takedowns on Ramona Pascual, considering they want her on the feet and she's not that good of a striker. So if Vidal is willing to play into her game and take down Ramona Pascual, maybe Pascual will have some advantages down there. But yet again, if Pascual tries to take down Vidal, then Vidal is not horrible on the ground either. So it's a weird fight. Pascual is a plus 135 underdog. For Vidal, she's minus 155 coming back on the other side. Don't put money on this fight. Just don't. It's a fight that might get, pushed to 145 midway through the week, or a catch weight of 140. It's a weird fight. Again, I don't think Pascual's all that great on the feet. I don't think Vidal's all that great on the feet. Vidal fought Aline Perez a couple fights ago. She was losing the fight until Perez got DQ'd. Again, this is I wouldn't say it's a bad fight. For the UFC, this is a bad fight. Who knows? I'm going to take Vidal by decision. Am I confident at all? No. Again, don't put money on this fight. I think Vidal's boxing might be a little bit better than Pascual's, just again, considering how Pascual blocks punches with her face. And then on the ground, I think Vidal's better with the jiu-jitsu. I think wrestling-wise, maybe Pascual's better, but jiu-jitsu and grappling-wise, I'm going to take Vidal. So I think Tamaris Vidal gets her first win in the UFC. She sends Pascual outside the promotion. Probably she'll end up in PFL next year or something. Vidal wins by decision. That's simple. So Jake Hadley taking on Carlos Candelario. It's just an interesting one, because Hadley's coming in this one, or Hadley's coming in this one's a minus 275 favorite. And let's be honest, his first fight in the UFC wasn't good. It was a disappointing performance for Hadley coming in there against Alan Nascimento. He didn't do anything in that fight. He got taken down, really just controlled on the ground by Nascimento. Now, he's not going to get control on the ground by Carlos Candelario. It's just not going to happen to him. And for Candelario, 2 straight losses. And yes, he did get into the UFC off of a loss. He had that close fight in the Contender Series against Victor Altamirano. Now, you can make the case Candelario 100% wins that fight, but Altamirano outstrikes him. And on the ground, I would say Candelario had the advantage down there, but it was the striking game out of Altamirano that won him that fight. You give 2 and 3 to Altamirano. You give the first one to Candelario. And then in Candelario's first fight in the UFC, they gave him Tatsuro Taira. And you know how good Taira is? He's just picked up another win in the UFC. This guy's, on a roll right now. He just picked up a submission win in his last fight against CJ Vergara, getting him by an armbar in the second round. That just kind of goes to show how good Candelario is defensively on the ground, because, Taira had him down for multiple points in that fight, and Candelario just, Taira went in there. He attempted a lot of submissions. Candelario fought off a bunch of them and, stayed in the fight. He lost by unanimous decision. Don't get me wrong, he lost every single round of that fight, but Candelario was good defensively on the ground to the point where Taira couldn't submit him. And I think that's a very important thing in this fight, because I think a lot of people are taking Jake Hadley to win this one by submission, just because you see what he's done outside of the UFC and Cage Warriors and on the Contender, where he did Mitra Poso, and then we did in Bellator as well. He goes in there, he gets submissions, and he picks up victories. Well, he couldn't do that to Alan Nascimento. He wasn't the better grappler in that fight. And this fight against Candelario, sure, is he the better grappler? I think he will be, but can he go in there and submit a decent defensive grappler in Candelario? I don't think so. Now on the feet, this fight's interesting because, again, Hadley had zero, and I mean zero, output on the feet in his last fight against Nascimento. Candelario will throw. Now, in his fight with Taira, he wasn't really winning on the feet either. In the third round, he didn't even land a strike. He did not land anything against Tatsuro Taira in the third round. But I would still say his striking is a little bit better than Hadley. Candelario will go in there and he will swing. Will he be all that successful in doing so? That's the thing. Not all the time. But I think Jake Hadley's better. I think he'll go in there. I think he will take down Candelario. I don't think he's going to be able to get a submission. Again, if Tatsuro Taira can't do it, I don't think Hadley's going to be able to, considering what Taira just did in his last fight against CJ Vergara. And again, is Vergara as good on the ground as Candelario is? No. But he's able to go in there and get a submission against Vergara in about 7 minutes. He had 15 to do against Candelario. He couldn't. So I still think Hadley wins. I'm not picking against the minus 275 favorite. So gonna go with Jake Hadley to win this one by decision over Carlos Candelario. Oh God, this fight. I mean, Johnny Munoz Jr. taking on Ludwig Sholinian. I mean, for Sholinian, his only fight in the UFC is Jack Shore. Now, I don't know how to really approach this fight because he comes in off the Ultimate Fighter, right? And he debuts before the Ultimate Fighter finale actually happens. I think it was, right? Because it was the week before Turchios and he stand. And Sholinian gets the fight against Jack Shore, loses by unanimous decision. And okay, like, it's gonna happen. Jack Shore's really good, but Sholinian literally did nothing in that fight. He barely, threw any punches. It was just, he didn't do anything. He got out-controlled on the ground by Jack Shore. I just don't know how to approach this fight between Sholinian and Johnny Munoz, considering Sholinian, he lost the fight, but given it was against a good guy in Jack Shore, who I know Shore in his most recent fight just did lose to Ricky Simone, but still, Shore is a really good fighter who, at that point in time, was still undefeated. Now, when you look at Sholinian's 2 fights in the Ultimate Fighter, it's a win over Mitch Raposo, which is a good win by unanimous decision, but Raposo, since then, comes into the Contender Series, he loses to Jake Hadley, and now Raposo is going to be fighting in CES, I think, next month or in a couple weeks. And then he loses to Ricky Turchios. And now, Turchios was on fire after the He Stand win, right? You'd think he's a big deal, and then he goes in there and just completely lays an egg, and I mean completely lays an absolute egg against Ayman Zahabi. He doesn't do anything. It was horrible, right? So, how good is Sholinian really? I don't know. His striking isn't bad, but it's not great, and his grappling, well, he just got controlled in the last fight against Shore. He tried to take him down, but he couldn't really do so. And now, if Sholinian's trying to take down Johnny Munoz, that's kind of where Johnny Munoz wants to be, but my problem with Johnny Munoz is, look at the guys he's fought. Okay, he's got losses to Nate Maness and Tony Gravely. And now, Maness is a good fighter. We're going to see him in a little bit. But that was such a weird fight because Munoz out-controls him on the ground for 10 minutes. He wins the significant strike battle, but then when you look what actually happened, I mean, Maness is the one applying pressure in the second and the third, and Munoz really isn't. It's just, nothing's really landing all that hard for Maness, but he's just at least putting out volume that Munoz wasn't really able to or willing to throw, and Maness just sneaks by and wins the decision 2-1. After a pretty dominant first round for Johnny Munoz. But then Munoz comes back and he beats Jamie Simmons. Okay, Jamie Simmons isn't good. He's no longer in the UFC. The guy went 0-2 and now he's out the promotion. I mean, the first round, it's Munoz really not doing much. It's just a boring first round. Second round, Munoz gets him to the ground. He submits him. Rear naked choke victory for Munoz. In his last fight, well, Tony Gravely knocked him out in a minute. So, like, where do you gauge this fight? Right? On the ground, Munoz is better. On the feet, who knows? Like, honestly, who knows who's the better striker? I think it's Johnny Munoz. I think Johnny Munoz is the better striker than Ludwig Sholinian. I think on the ground, Munoz is better as well. But again, don't lay any money on this fight. Like, there's going to be a lot of fights in this card that I'm going to say that. Like, again, the first 3 fights, don't put money on it. Because these are a lot of guys coming off losses, and it's just, who knows at this point? So Sholinian, again, at plus 116. You got Munoz at minus 190. I'm going to take the favorite, but am I confident at all? No. I'm going to take Munoz to win this one by decision. I could definitely see a world where Sholinian wins a boring decision as well, but I'm going to take Johnny Munoz Jr. to win this one by unanimous decision. All right, Polyana Viana versus Jinyu Frey. I said it once, I'll say it again. Do not put money on this fight. Who knows? I mean, okay, I kind of think I know what's going to happen, and I'll talk about it. So, okay, Jinyu Frey, coming off the loss to Vanessa Demopoulos. Now, she did not lose that fight. Rewatch that fight. Jinyu Frey wins rounds 1 and 2. She should have won the fight, whatever they gave it to Demopoulos. Was it a robbery? No, but I still thought Jinyu Frey should have won the fight. And she was coming off of 2 straight back-to-back wins. Looked good against Gloria De Paula, looked good against Ashley Yoder. Comes in the UFC, loses to Kay Hansen. That loss does not age well. And loses to Loma Luke Boni after that, given the Hansen fight was on somewhat short notice, so I'll give her somewhat of a pass on that. But what Jinyu Frey does really well, she keeps fights standing, and she just, beats up her opponents in the feet. And she'll be able, and since the Luponi fight, that's what she's really done. Now, the Gloria De Paula fight, it was Jinyu Frey working on the ground. But you look at the Ashley Yoder fight stand on the feet, she was able to outstrike Yoder to victory. Yoder goes 0 for 8 in her takedowns in that fight, and Jinyu Frey wins. Right? And Polyana Viana, you know what she's going to try to do in this fight. Viana is going to try to get Jinyu Frey down, because that's really what Viana does in all of her fights. And the problem in her last fight, she just got out-grappled. Tabitha Ricci was the better grappler between Viana and her, and Ricci went in there, out-grappled Viana, took her down 5 times, and ended up winning a decision. When Viana is the better grappler, though, when you look at fights like Emily Whitmire, you look at Mallory Martin, she's able to go in there and get armbar submission wins in the first round. The thing is, Whitmire and Mallory Martin are no longer in the UFC. Those are fighters that are not in the promotion anymore, and Viana was able really to bully them. But if Viana can't get a takedown, she's going to lose. You look at the Veronica Macedo fight, she gets submitted in the first round. When Viana's not the better grappler, she loses. When Viana's not the better wrestler, she loses. She's not the better wrestler in this fight. Jinyu Frey is going to be able to keep her standing and Jinyu Frey is going to force Viana to box with her. that is not a recipe for success for Polyana Viana, because Polyana Viana is a fighter who got knocked down by Hannah Cifers. Hannah Cifers outstruck her. And yes, is Viana's jiu-jitsu good? Sure, but only when she gets in certain positions is Viana a very good UFC fighter. Other than that, she's going to get beat on the feet in this fight. And again, don't put money on it, because maybe, Jinh Yu Frey slips on a banana peel, Polyana Viana locks her in a guillotine, a la Brian Ortega, Alexander Volkanovski, and Viana wins the fight. I wouldn't be surprised. Like, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. But I think Jinh Yu Frey is going to win. I don't think she's going to allow Viana to get her to the ground. Frey's going to keep it standing, and she's just going to outbox her to a boring decision. I mean, I hate to say that, but that's likely how this fight is going to go. Because again, Viana is not going to be able to take her down. Jinh Yu Frey is going to keep the fight on the feet. And if Viana can't get the fight to the ground again, she can't get a submission and she can't win the fight, because Viana is not outboxing Jinh Yu Frey. It's not going to happen. Jinh Yu Frey is going to win this fight. She's not going to get a finish because she doesn't have all that much power, but still, she'll be able to do enough technically sound-wise. Yeah. Polyana Viana is going to lose to Jinh Yu Frey. Frey gets it done by decision. So Benito Lopez is back for the first time in a while, and they threw him straight into the wolves. Mario Bautista is fighting well right now. This guy is a very talented fighter. He's coming off that big submission win over Brian Kelleher in his last fight. That fight lasted about 2 minutes. Immediately, Bautista takes him to the ground, sinks a rear naked choke, gets the victory. First round submission victory for Mario Bautista, and he's won 4 out of his last 5. The only loss being to Trevin Jones, where Jones finished him at UFC 259. Got knocked down the second round, which is all right, but Bautista beat Jay Perrin before that, beat Miles Johns. He's got a victory over Jinsu Sun as well, and the only loss before that is Corey Sandhagen. I mean, Mario Bautista is a good fighter. This dude has been, fighting his ass off right now, and they're going to give him a guy in Benito Lopez who hasn't fought in over 3 years. I mean, I don't really understand the matchmaking here, because Lopez isn't bad, don't get me wrong, but you look at his fight against his last fight on in Sacramento against Vince Morales, it's the fight where, did Lopez really win? I don't think he did. I think Morales won that fight. I give rounds 1 and 3 to Vince Morales. You can make the case that Morales wins the second as well. It's a weird fight, but they give Benito Lopez a victory over Vince Morales in a fight that Morales definitely looks like he won. I mean, hell, he knocks down Lopez in the first round. And I think the judges gave that first round, one judge gave that first round to Lopez as well, which doesn't make sense. Lopez gets submitted by Manny Bermudez. He gets subbed in the Ngannou Velasquez card in the first round by guillotine. In his first fight in the UFC, he barely beats Albert Morales by unanimous decision. Sure, he won the fight, but I don't understand why they're throwing him in there against Mario Bautista right now. It doesn't make sense. Bautista's going to go in there. He's going to take him down. He's going to submit him right away. I mean, this is, if Bautista's able to do that to Brian Kelleher, who given, is Kelleher the best defensive grappling guy? No, he's not. But you're having to take on a guy who hasn't fought in over 3 years. And Bautista, again, minus 230 does not do Bautista justice here. I don't know what Benito Lopez has been doing the last 3 years. I just don't. But I know what Mario Bautista has been doing the last 3 years. He's been going in and he's been winning fights. He's going to go into this one. He'll take down Benito Lopez right away, and he's going to submit him in the first round. I don't really see another way about this fight. It's going to be one-way traffic for Mario Bautista. He's going to pick up yet another one in the UFC, going to make it 5 out of his last 6 all dubs for Bautista. First round submission victory and the first finish on this card I'm predicting for Mario Bautista. Again, getting it done in the first round by sub. And our next fight is Miranda Maverick versus Shanna Young. This fight was supposed to happen in Salt Lake City on that Usman Edwards card. Already talked about it. Prediction doesn't really change. It's just from a couple months ago. So yeah, let's roll that. So yeah, we got 2 fights in this card that feel like pretty easy locks. I mean, this is one of them. I'll just say it out right now. Miranda Maverick is not losing to Shanna Young. Right? I mean, Miranda Maverick, this is a fight that you know what they're doing. Miranda Maverick's a minus 425 favorite in this fight. And yes, she won her last fight. She looked good in the Sabina Mazo fight. That's a fight on the Santos Ankalaev card. It's just Miranda Maverick dominating on the ground. Eventually, she found her way to the rear naked choke finish, and she beat Sabina Mazo. And that was a fight where, Maverick's coming off of back-to-back losses for the first time in her career. She loses to Macy Barber by split decision in a fight that she definitely won, but then she got dominated by Erin Blanchfield, who the UFC feels like, okay, we're gonna book her against Molly McCann. Like, really? We're ending the Molly McCann hype train just like that, because Erin Blanchfield is going to dominate Molly McCann when they fight in MSG at UFC 281. But yeah, Miranda Maverick loses to Blanchfield. Blanchfield just showed why she's the hottest prospect in this division. She just is. Erin Blanchfield is going to be a problem in this division. 12 minutes of control time in that fight against Miranda Maverick, and kind of just stole the thunder that Miranda Maverick had at one point in this division. And I mean, hell, Blanchfield, I think, is truly on a run where she could be one of the next top challengers in this division. She takes down McCann. She wins a couple more. She could be looking at herself in a title fight very quickly. I don't know if I want to see it just yet, but again, just keep an eye out on Erin Blanchfield. But Maverick wins her first 2 fights in the UFC. splits open the nose of Liana Jojua in Abu Dhabi. She beats Jillian Robertson. She just out-wrestles Robertson in that fight and loses to Barber in that weird controversial decision, loses to Erin Blanchfield, and then beats Sabina Mazo. Now, Shanna Young. So Shanna Young just picked up her first win in the UFC. It's a win over Gina Mazzani. Gina Mazzani's not that great. Shanna Young eventually gets her down. She's got back control, and eventually she finishes she finishes Gina Mazzani on the ground. I mean, I'm not going to put anything into that. Gina Mazzani was never the greatest UFC fighter. She just wasn't. I mean, her only win in the UFC was, she beat Wu Yannan, who we're going to see in a second here, but she also beat Rachel Ostovich. I mean, those are only 2 wins. Shanna Young, in her other fights not named the fight against Gina Mazzani, you look at the losses. It's Macy Chasson. Chasson's able to dominate her at the wrestling. 8 minutes control time. Stephanie Yeager's able to dominate her as well on the ground eventually. Stephanie Yeager finishes her by TKO on the ground. As a result of the takedowns and as a result of the dominant wrestling performance Stephanie Yeager was able to put on Shanna Young. What does Miranda Maverick do really well? Wrestle. I mean, this just feels like an obvious one. They're not setting up Shanna Young for success at all in this fight. Miranda Maverick's going to come in there. She will take her down in the first round, and it is going to be hell for Shanna Young for however long she is down on the ground, because I don't honestly think this one's going to last too long. I think it's a Maverick takedown early. I think Miranda's dominating on the ground. Eventually, she will find her way to the submission in the first round. I think Miranda Maverick gets back-to-back wins here in the UFC, making her UFC record now 4-2 with a first-round submission win over Shanna Young. Again, I've seen Shanna Young against 2 other UFC caliber fighters in Stephanie Yeager and Macy Chasson. What happened in both of them? She got out wrestled, and in the Stephanie Yeager fight, Yeager was able to find a finish on the ground due to elbows. I think Maverick's able to sink in a submission, so I'm going to go with Miranda Maverick to win this fight. I got her by first round sub. Next up, we have got Derek Minner taking on Shailon Nuerdanbieke, and for Nuerdanbieke, 37-10 at professional career, and the man is only 28 years old, and for Shailon Nuerdanbieke, looking pretty good in his last couple fights. I mean, he came in, had a loss to Josh Kalibau, that's all right, but in back-to-back fights, he's beat Sean Soriano by unanimous decision, and then he beat TJ Brown after that, and TJ Brown in that fight got beat up by Shailon Nuerdanbieke. Nuerdanbieke is out striking him, he knocks him down in the first round. The second round, Shailon is, it was a tougher round for him, but still took down Brown. I think the judges gave the round to Brown, but in the third, it was all Shailon Nuerdanbieke taking down TJ Brown, out striking him as well, picking up the unanimous decision victory. And for Nuerdanbieke, I mean, the guy's wrestling is pretty solid. His stand-up game is pretty good as well. And for Nuerdanbieke, again, the power has been there as of late. And he's taken on Derek Minner, a guy who, for Minner, it's been kind of a sprint in the first round for him. And then after that, he kind of just, he kind of wears down as the fight does go on. You look at the Ryan Hall fight back at UFC 269, and for Minner, wins that first round. Looks really good in the first. Second, though, Hall wins. Third, Hall wins. It's just pretty dominant performances in the second and third for Ryan Hall. You go to the Darren Elkins fight. First round looks good for Minner. Second round, Elkins takes over. Minner doesn't even land a strike, and Elkins knocks him out in the second round. Minner's fights against Charles Rosa and TJ Laramie were good victories for him. The Laramie fight was a submission in the first round in a minute. And the Charles Rosa fight, we've gone over this with Charles Rosa a million times. And Charles Rosa is not the better wrestler, he loses, or he's not the better grappler, an all-around ground fighter, he loses. When he's the better ground fighter, he wins. It's just purely dependent on if he can out-grapple his opponent in the first round, he'll win. If he can't, he'll lose. And Minner's first fight in the promotion was Grant Dawson in the second round. And again, that has been a thing for Minner, though. He looks really good in the first, and that's where he is usually his most dangerous. But if he can't, if he can't get his opponent out there in the first round, he tends to lose a lot. When you look at Ryan Hall, you look at Elkins, you look at Grant Dawson, those are where his losses have been in the UFC. If you can't get the finish in the first round, he does lose. And I've been so impressed with Shailon Nuerdanbieke, though. I really have. This guy's had a million pro fights already, and he's got a really good stand-up game. He's got a improving ground game as well. Again, the guy keeps on evolving as a fighter. You look at the Sean Soriano fight, it's the grappling that ends up winning him that fight, and in his next fight after that against TJ Brown, it's the striking that wins him that fight as well, showing the power and showing what he can do to guys in the feet. So I've been really impressed with Shailon Nuerdanbieke. I think he will beat TJ Brown. I think he will beat Derek Minner as long as he doesn't get subbed in the first round. If he can just keep the fight standing in the first, or honestly, if he can just not lose in the first round, he should win the fight. I anticipate Minner to win the first round. But after that, I think he's going to get tired. I think Shailon Nuerdanbieke is going to put him into difficult spots. And I think Nuerdanbieke is going to knock him out in the second round. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets it done late in the first, but I think in the second, Nuerdanbieke, again, will find that big power shot. Minner will tire. Very similar to what happened in the Darren Elkins fight. I think it's going to be kind of an exact replica of the Elkins fight. I think Minner's going to find success on the ground. He's not going to be able to put away Nuerdanbieke, though, in that first round. Nuerdanbieke gets to the stool, and in the second round, he will find that big power shot. He will tire Derek Minner, and he will knock him out. So I'm going to go with Shailon Nuerdanbieke to pick up his 38th professional win of his career. Nuerdanbieke will beat Darrick Minner, and he'll get it done in the second round by knockout. So there's a reason Almeida is a minus 650 favorite in this fight. It's because he's not going to lose. He's not going to lose to Maxime Grishin. I don't think Grishin's all that bad. I really don't. I mean, this guy's coming off a win over Will Knight in his last fight. Back, I think it was in Houston, UFC 271. It was a unanimous decision victory over Will Knight. The problem with that Grishin fight is if you get taken down 3 times by Will Knight, and given, yeah, Grishin got back up to his feet, which is fine, but if you get taken down by Will Knight, yeah, Almeida is going to take you down. He's going to hold you down. That's a problem. I mean, Grishin's a solid striker. I think Grishin, will he have a puncher's chance in the defeat against Almeida? Not really, because, unfortunately, Grishin's not one of those guys who's a one-shot knockout power type of guy. He's really not. He takes it more of an accumulation of strikes to put away his opponents. I mean, his last, one big knockout win was back in the PFL in 2019 where he picked up a win in 48 seconds. But other than that, Grishin's not going to go in there and hit you with one shot and put you to sleep. He's going to take more, again, of an accumulation of damage to put you away. And against a guy like Almeida, I mean, you're going to need to hope you just knock him out the punch, because it's just, this guy is just going to overwhelm you on the ground. He is so big and he is so strong. Now, this is a guy who's been fighting some at catchweight 220. He had the fight against his Anton Turkiaj in his last fight. Then he fought Danilo Marquez at 205, and he fought Parker Porter at 265 as well. So he's fought at technically 3 different weight classes, or 3 different, I mean, catchweight's not technically a weight class at 220, but still 3 different weight classes, or, 3 different weight requirements so far in his career. And now he gets Grishin back at 265 pounds, and Grishin's been a guy who has fought at 205. His last fight was against Will Knight at 205, so it's kind of interesting because again, you got 2 guys who have fought at light heavyweight before, both going up to heavyweight and fighting up there. Now, again, Almeida's going to take down Maxime Grishin. He's either going to beat his head in or he's going to get a submission victory. It's just, there's no other 2 ways about it. This guy is so good, and there's a reason, again, he's a minus 650 favorite. This guy's the future of the division. We will see if, it will be telling when this guy takes on a very good defensive wrestler. I would say, I mean, I know we're getting up there, but like a Curtis Blades or a guy that Almeida's not able to bully on the ground, but Grishin is a guy that he's going to be able to just go in there, bully. He's either going to be able to trip him, work him in the clinch, or just take him down, and eventually, either get the TKO like he did against, I think he TKO'd Marquez, right? Yeah, get the TKO like he did against Marquez, or, sink in a rear naked choke finish like he did against Porter, or in his last fight at UFC 279. Either way, Almeida is going to find the finish, and it's going to be really quick. I think it's going to happen in the first round. I got Almeida to stay undefeated in the UFC. He will be 4-0 after this first round submission victory over Maxime Grishin. I think he gets it done pretty easily. Next up, we got a pretty good fight between 2 guys who are undefeated so far in the UFC. We've got Grant Dawson taking on Marco Madsen. It should be a really good one here. Of course, at 155 pounds for Grant Dawson, his last victory is a win over Jared Gordon, submitting him in the 3rd round by rear naked choke. And Grant Dawson, again, he's a constant pressure wrestler, and same can be said about Mark Madsen. Now, Madsen, in his last fight, beat Vince Pichel. It was kind of a close fight early because Madsen wasn't really able to hold Pichel down until the 3rd. Eventually, in the 3rd round, Madsen did have him down and held him down. I thought he won the fight, but it wasn't the most impressive performance. I think it was on the main card of UFC 273. For Madsen's fight before that, he beat Clay Guida, beat him by split decision. It wasn't great. Madsen couldn't get a takedown, but didn't really attempt a takedown. He decided to go in there and strike with Clay Guida. I thought he won the first 2 rounds, and then he lost the 3rd. He won that one, and, Madsen before that beat Austin Hubbard. It wasn't very impressive. I mean, it was, the wrestling looked good, but it wasn't, the most, eye-opening performance out of Mark Madsen. And prior to the Vince Pichel fight, the thing with Madsen was he'd win the first 2 rounds, and he'd kind of fall off going into that 3rd like we've seen in the Guida and the Hubbard fight. But again, the Vince Pichel fight, it was that 3rd round, which was the key round for Marco Madsen to win, and of course, getting the W in that fight. Madsen's 38, though. He's old. Of course, the former Olympic wrestler for Denmark. Madsen is still undefeated at 12-0. But he's taking on a young gun here in Grant Dawson, who, yes, I wasn't all that impressed with the draw to Ricky Glenn, because at the end of that fight, he was not looking good, and he tired very quickly in that 3rd round and got completely dominated in that 3rd round. Total strikes going 66-2 in favor of Ricky Glenn. But with the exception of that one fight, Grant Dawson has been very good. You look at the Leonardo Santos win when he beats him with 1 second left, when he beats Nadnir Amani, when Dawson beats Jared Gordon. My only problem with Grant Dawson in this fight is, can he take down Mark Madsen? I don't think he's going to be able to. I mean, I think we are going to see spots where this fight is contested on the ground, but I think that's where it opens this fight up for Mark Madsen to win. If this is just a wrestling fight, okay, Mark Madsen is going to have the advantage over there. But now when you think of the striking, I think Grant Dawson's a better striker than Marco Madsen, even though Dawson's striking isn't the most refined. It's still, I think, a little bit better than what Dawson can bring to the table. I think this is a close fight. I really think it is. I don't love minus 200 on Dawson here because I think this fight is a lot closer than what the odds do describe. But I still think Dawson wins. I think he wins a decision over Madsen. Again, I think it's a razor thin, close decision fight just because I think both these guys are very, I think once the fight doesn't hit the mat, I think they're very even. Wrestling-wise, again, I give the slight advantage to Mark Madsen, but still, I think this is a very good fight. I got Dawson win by decision, but again, could go either way. Okay, so this flyweight fight's really interesting. We've got Tiger Ulanbekov versus Nate Maness. This fight's going to be interesting, and it's a fight that we'll see coming up like on Friday when the weigh-ins happen. Now, I'm not going to make a separate video, specifically breaking down Tiger Ulanbekov and Nate Maness, but I find it interesting because Nate Maness is going to be fighting at flyweight for the first time in his career. This is a guy who used to fight featherweight. Nate Maness used to fight at 145. Now he's all the way down at 125 pounds. His first fight in the UFC is Johnny Munoz, which we talked about earlier, which, oh, by the way, was just in 2020 on the Brunson Shabazian card. Maness won at featherweight. Then he fights Luke Sanders after that. That's at catchweight 140. The Tony Gravely fight after that's at 135. His latest fight in the loss to Umar Nurmagomedov, where he just completely got dominated. It was a one-sided beatdown for Umar Nurmagomedov. But anyways, Nurmagomedov beats him. That fight was at bantamweight. Now he's dropping down again to 125 pounds to take on Tiger Ulanbekov, who it's been a mixed bag of results for Ulanbekov in the UFC. I thought he was going to beat Tim Elliott. Obviously, that didn't happen in his last fight. Elliott did pick up the victory in that fight. And it was an interesting fight because Elliott knocks him down. And prior to the Elliott fight for Ulanbekov, of course, he's got the win over Bruno Souza in 2020, and then he's got the win over Alan Nascimento by split decision. Again, knowing what we know now about Nascimento, maybe not a bad victory at all, and it's really not a bad victory, but still was a split decision. But it was just kind of a boring fight. It was a boring fight that Ulanbekov had a result to the wrestling, which he took him down, he held him down, but it wasn't, the most fan-friendly style of fight. And is he going to be able to take down Nate Maness? I don't know, because Maness is going to be huge for 125. No matter what happens, no matter if Maness, looks really, looks bad at 125, no matter what happens, he is still going to be a big guy at flyweight. And it's just a matter of, can he take a punch from Ulanbekov? Because Ulanbekov does hit fairly hard for being a 125-pounder, but doesn't have a knockout win to his name just yet. Now, if he's going to get one, it might be this Nate Maness fight, even though Maness, his chin has held up to this point in his career. I mean, again, his only loss is Umar Nurmagomedov, but you just don't know with the guy dropping another 10 pounds given. I still think the 135-pound cut looked, I wouldn't say bad on Maness, but it was definitely a challenging cut to a certain degree, and now he's all the way down at 125. But again, I don't think Ulanbekov's going to knock him out, even though if there's going to be a fight where Ulanbekov's going to get a knockout, it's going to be this one. It'll just be basically dependent on if Maness can carry that power that he had at 145 and 135 down to 125. Because can Ulanbekov deal with that power? And then, also, can Ulanbekov take Nate Maness down? Even though, yes, they'll be the same weight, but with rehydrating and all of that, and with Maness, of course, getting back to his natural weight after making that 125-pound limit, how big will he be on fight night? So it's a very confusing fight to pick in that regard because there's just so many question marks surrounding this fight and a lot of intriguing questions, don't get me wrong, because I think Maness is the better striker. We'll see how much power he truly does have because this is a guy who knocked out Tony Gravely just a couple fights ago. He, caught him with a big hook, sat him down, won the fight that way, in a fight that I didn't think Maness was going to go win, right? The guy has shocked me before. He might shock me again this week. Again, can Ulanbekov get the takedown though? That will be huge. And what is he able to do once he does get Maness down? Because again, Maness is a pretty big guy for 135. He will be a massive flyweight. What is he? 5'11", 5'10". He's going to be a massive 125-pounder. We'll see how his weight carries and his muscle really carries into this fight with Tiger Ulanbekov. This is a coin flip. It's truly a coin flip for me. Again, I think the real pick should come on Friday, considering how we see Nate Maness at 125 and if he misses weight or not, because again, time will only tell on that end. But if I have to make a pick on Sunday, I'm going to take Nate Maness. I think Maness is able to win. I think he's able to go in there, and I think he's able to finish Tiger Ulanbekov in the second round by knockout, just because I think his power will translate into that 125-pound frame that he is trying to fill, and I think that will be, key in this fight for Nate Maness to go out and get the victory. But again, though, if he looks like crap going into Saturday, then maybe we switch the pick. But even then, if he does miss weight and he didn't really drain himself to that, if Maness goes in there, okay, it's something that I got to bring up. If Maness doesn't drain himself enough going into that fight, and he's like weighing 130 going into Saturday, but they still let the fight carry on, then I think he still wins. So I think he's still got the power to deal with Ulanbekov, and don't think Ulanbekov's able to go in there and take him down. We'll see though. Again, a lot, and I mean a lot of question marks. I'm going into this fight, but I'm taking Nate Maness to go in there and win it by second round TKO. Oh god, it's low level heavyweight fighting. All right, it's one of these fights again. Don't put money on it. You got even odds on both sides. I mean, I don't know. Josh Parisian, Chase Sherman. Okay, Chase Sherman was out of the UFC. He was gone. He was going to go to BKFC. He was going to work on his boxing. He said, maybe someday I'll come back to the UFC. He's 32 years old. Heavyweights, they can fight till they're 45. Hell, look at Andre Arlovski. You just got dominated in his last fight, but it's all right. You know, Sherman said, I'm probably done. After losing to Jake Collier, he's on a 3-fight losing streak to the likes of Arlovski, Porter, Collier. He said, I'm done. They called him. They said, yeah, you want to fight Alexander Romanov? He took it. He got submitted in 2 minutes. But then he came back in his last fight, contract on the line, went in there and beat Jared Vanderaa by TKO, finished in the 3rd round. Oh my goodness, he beat Jared Vanderaa. Okay, and that was a back and forth heavyweight brawl. Both these guys just kind of threw, and eventually Chase the Vanilla Gorilla Sherman won the fight. And now he gets Josh Parisian, who surprisingly is only 2-2 in the UFC. I thought he was worse, I'm not going to lie. He comes into the UFC by beating Chad Johnson in the Contender Series. He loses to Parker Porter after that. He's got a really bad fight where he barely beats Roque Martinez. He loses to Dontel Mays in a fight where, yes, he got humped at the end of the 2nd round. Yes, he did. North-south position. Dontel Mays just, drove his nuts right into Josh Parisian's face. It's all right, and more than just that, but it's fine. Pause. And then after that, Parisian went on to fight Alain Baudot. And that was one of the worst fights I've ever watched. It was really bad. It was on Saruki and Gamrot in the Apex in the summer. Alain Baudot scores the knockdown in the 1st round. You're thinking, wow, maybe he's able to get the finish. He doesn't. And in the 2nd round, he just gets tired. Parisian gets him to the ground, and he TKOs him because Alain Baudot had no idea what to do once the fight hit the mat. And also, who has no idea what to do once the fight hits the mat? Oh, it's Chase Sherman, because Jake Collier was able to submit Chase Sherman in 2 minutes. Why is Chase Sherman always on main cards? He's always in the main card. I think the Vanderaa fight was in the main card. The Collier fight was a co-main event. The Parker Porter fight was a main card. Andre Arlovski was a main card. But the only fight that wasn't a main card fight for Chase Sherman was Alexander Romanov, the guy who's in the top 10 right now. I mean, I know he just lost to Tybura, but still. This fight's in the main card because, of course, you got to put the low-level heavyweights in the main card. And I think Josh Parisian's going to win because I think boxing-wise, sure, Sherman's better than Parisian, but you know what Parisian can do that Chase Sherman can't? Wrestle. Chase Sherman was going to be out the sport of MMA so he could just box, a la Greg Hardy. He was just going to go in there and he just wanted to bare-knuckle box like Ben Rothwell and not have to worry about his ground game anymore, right? He's back in the sport of MMA, and again, you have to be able to wrestle in MMA. Josh Parisian is not the best wrestler on the planet, but he's a better wrestler than Chase Sherman. He's going to get Chase Sherman down. I would say maybe a submission out of Parisian, but I don't honestly know if he knows too many submissions. So I think he's going to go in there. I think he's going to take down Chase Sherman, and I think he's going to ground and pound him out to a victory. I got Josh Parisian to win this fight by 2nd round TKO. Is it going to be a good fight? Probably not. Would I be surprised if Sherman just hits Parisian with the big shot and puts him out? No, I think there's a chance that happens. But also, didn't Chase Sherman, and if he wins, he's probably going to celebrate, because I think he did this at the end of his last fight. After he beat Jared Vanderaa, didn't he take a picture with O.J. Simpson and said, 2 killers right here in this pick? That's great. I'm going to take Josh Parisian. I think Parisian wins by 2nd round TKO. I don't know what this fight is. Please do not put any money on it, but I'm taking Parisian by 2nd round knockout. Great fight here in the co-main event. We have got D-Rod, Daniel Rodriguez taking on the Haitian sensation, Neil Magny. And for Neil Magny, very tough fight in his last fight, but Magny's that type of guy, and Dana White said this a million times. Neil Magny will fight anybody at any place at any time, and he took on Shavkat Rakhmonov in his last fight, and sure, he lost. Rakhmonov beat him by guillotine choke in the 2nd round. Magny just really couldn't get going. It was constant pressure out of Rakhmonov. Immediate takedown to start the 1st round. Held Magny down basically throughout the entirety of the 1st. And in the 2nd, more of the same. Rakhmonov had him down until he submitted him with the guillotine to win the fight. Now, Magny's fight before that, I didn't think he beat Max Payne Griffin. And Max Payne Griffin's coming off the victory over Tim Means in his last fight. And oh, by the way, why that fight was a split decision, I don't know. What were the judges watching? Even Tim Means thought he didn't win the fight. And when the judges gave Tim Means the fight, it was stupid. But anyways, that fight with Magny and Griffin is very interesting. You can make the case Max Griffin wins that fight. He obviously wins the 1st round. He gets the knockdown. It was all Max Griffin in the 1st. The 3rd is all Neil Magny, of course, with the takedown, keeping control in that 3rd round. The 2nd, though, man, that 2nd round's close. I think Max Griffin got it. Magny goes 0-4 in his takedowns in that round, and it looks like Griffin wins. It's fine. They give it to Magny. I'm okay with it. But you know what Neil Magny does really well? He's a very good distance striker. He's always, he's pretty much always going to be the bigger fighter in all of his fights. Of course, fighting at welterweight, the guy is 6'3", but D-Rod's pretty big for the weight class too. He's 6'1", but there will be a 6-inch reach advantage for Neil Magny. So it'll be very telling in this fight if Daniel Rodriguez can close the distance and get big shots off against Magny, because Magny's so good at keeping distance, keeping away from his opponents, and we can talk about what D-Rod's done recently. I mean, you look at the fight that he had against Li Jingliang in his last one, a fight that a lot of people thought he lost. I mean, I think he probably did. You give the first and second round, you give the first round to Li Jingliang, and then you probably give the third to Li Jingliang as well. But honestly, it's a close fight. I'm not mad with the decision at all. I'm really not. And D-Rod looked very good before that fight. The Kevin Lee fight was a very good performance for him on the feet. Daniel Rodriguez outstruck Kevin Lee for 3 rounds. The second you can, or the first you can give to Kevin Lee, but the second and third all D-Rod. And then you go into the Preston Parsons fight. Parsons shouldn't have been in there with D-Rod. D-Rod's a serious top 15 level guy, and Preston Parsons, that was just his first fight in the promotion. And oh, by the way, Daniel Rodriguez was coming off a victory over Mike Perry before that. But D-Rod's such a good striker. Magny's a good striker as well. Both these guys might not have the most power in there, even though D-Rod has showcased that in the Dwight Grant fight, the come from behind victory, where he knocked out Dwight Grant in the span of 2 minutes. But obviously, Neil Magny's usually not going to knock anybody out. It's just not the way he fights. But for D-Rod, I think the power advantage goes to him. But you can see a stand-up fight between both these guys. And it's just a matter of, again, can Magny keep distance, and can Magny keep Daniel Rodriguez away from getting those big power shots and, limiting the damage that D-Rod is able to do. At plus money, I'm going to take Daniel Rodriguez. I know he looked a little bit slow in the Jingliang fight, and Jingliang beat him to the punch a couple times. Sure, I get that. But I still think he's able to go in there and win this fight against Magny. I think he's able to outstrike Neil Magny 4-3 rounds. And again, I haven't been impressed with what I've seen out of Magny recently, dating back to the Griffin fight. Again, I'm not going to take anything away from him in the Rachmanov fight, because Rachmanov's a beast. His win over Jeff Neal is very good, and, he looked good in that fight. But it took until the third round for Neil Magny to really turn it on against Jeff Neal. And I think D-Rod's going to bring it to him early. I think Rodriguez is going to win the first 2 rounds. I think that's going to be enough for him to win the fight. So I'm going to take Daniel Rodriguez to win the first 2 rounds and win the fight. I don't think Magny's able to hold down D-Rod like he was able to do against Griffin in the third. And even if he does do that in the third round, again, I think Rodriguez banks those first 2. So I'm going to take Daniel Rodriguez to win yet another fight here in the UFC, continue his winning streak, and pick up his 8th win in the promotion. Daniel Rodriguez takes down, or he doesn't take down, but still he beats Neil Magny. You get the point. Daniel Rodriguez beats Neil Magny, and he'll get the win by unanimous decision. All right, main event time. We have got Marina Rodriguez taking on Amanda Lemos at 115 pounds. And for Marina Rodriguez, is this finally the fight that gets her a title shot? It might. In a main event spot, 5 rounds, her and Amanda Lemos. And again, for Lemos, coming off the victory over Michelle Waterson-Gomez in her last fight, submitting her with the guillotine in the second round in Long Island, New York, And Lemos was on a roll, man. I mean, if you take away the Jessica Andrade fight, Lemos hasn't lost yet at 115 pounds. But again, the Andrade fight happened. She lost. It was a standing arm triangle choke in the main event earlier this year, which gave Andrade the victory. And now, of course, Jessica Andrade, I think, she's going to fight Laura Murphy. She's going to go back up to 125 to take on Murphy, even though, there could be a title shot waiting for Jessica Andrade at 115 pounds. We'll have to wait and see, though, what happens to Carla Esparza and Zhang Wei Li. But for Marina Rodriguez, Lemos' opponent here tonight, she's coming off that split decision victory over Yan Xiaonan in her last fight, and that win continues to age pretty well. I mean, Yan fought Mackenzie Dern most recently, 2 fighters that Marina Rodriguez has gone out there and beat, and Yan Xiaonan beat Mackenzie Dern by majority decision. But in that Rodriguez and Yan Xiaonan fight, Rodriguez goes in there. She wins rounds 2 and 3, giving the victory. The third round is definitely telling, though. Marina Rodriguez looked very good in that third, outstriking Yan Xiaonan basically 2-1 in that third, picking the victory that way. And what Marina Rodriguez will bring to the plate. A lot of power on the feet, but a very good striker who can, again, deliver with a lot of power throughout the entirety of the fight, but still be a technical, not technical, but still be a volume striker and always still be in your face for that entirety of the 25 minutes. That's something I don't know if I can say about Amanda Lemos. Lemos will have moments in her fight where she isn't the same fighter that she is at the beginning of the fight. Like, you look at the Angela Hill fight, and that's the fight that's always in the top of my mind when I talk about Amanda Lemos. Lemos looks good in the first, but in the second and third, she's not the same fighter. She still wins the fight by split decision, barely, but you can make the case she loses rounds 2 and 3. But she's not the same fighter that she was at the beginning of the fight. And we still haven't seen Lemos in a fight where she's had to go all 25 minutes. She's been booked for a 25-minute fight before. Of course, the fight never, didn't go to the 25 minutes against Jessica Andrade. Only lasted 3 minutes. But she's been booked in that atmosphere before. We haven't seen her go the full 25. We've seen Marina Rodriguez be that same fighter at minute 1 all the way to minute 25. We know Rodriguez can do that. And Rodriguez can still deliver with the same power that she did have at the beginning of the fight that she had at the end. I don't know if Lemos, we can say the same about Lemos, considering, again, she has him in that same fighter in points in some of her fights at the beginning of the fight all the way to the 15th minute of the fight. We just haven't seen Lemos be that fighter yet. She's got power, sure, but I would argue that Rodriguez has got more. Striking-wise, I think Lemos might be a little bit faster, but still Rodriguez, I think, is able to deliver at a much more effective rate and and more damaging clip as well compared to what Lemos can bring. And on the ground, I don't think this one just hits the mat at all. I just don't. I mean, Rodriguez isn't that fighter that's going to do that, and for Lemos, not really. It's going to be a stand-up fight that I think Marina Rodriguez will just run away with, I think. I think Lemos will have a good first round. I think that's where, if Lemos is going to win this fight, it's going to be if she catches Marina with something early in the first round or catches her with something that changes the course and the direction of the fight from what we think is going to be a Rodriguez 25-minute beatdown. But I don't think Lemos is going to find all that success in the first. I think she'll win the fight, or the first round, excuse me. I think Lemos will win the first round. I think it'll be a competitive first. But as we get into rounds 2, 3, 4, and 5, I think Marina will definitely start to take over. Even if Lemos can win the second, I don't think she's gonna be able to win the first 3, and I definitely think Rodriguez is gonna win rounds 4 and 5. So I think Rodriguez wins the decision. How she does it, we'll see. It's going to be through the striking, though, and I think it will be a fight where Lemos will be barely making it to the end of the fight, because in the 4th and the 5th, Rodriguez will have her in danger with the power that she's still throwing at deep into the fight, into the 20th and 25th minutes. But I'm going to take Marina Rodriguez to beat Amanda Lemos anywhere from 3 rounds to 2 to 5 rounds to nothing. If I had to make an official prediction, I'll say Rodriguez wins 4 rounds to 1, the only round Lemos getting being the first. So I think Marina Rodriguez wins in yet another main event, or second main event spot. Rodriguez delivers. We'll see if she gets a title shot or not, again, depending on what happens with Zhang Weili and with Carla Esparza next week. Big card, Madison Square Garden. Main event, Israel Adesanya, Alex Bahia, and the co-main, of course, being Carla and Zhang Weili, and, oh, by the way, Michael Chandler, Dustin Poirier. But a big card coming next week from New York. But again, we'll see what happens with Marina Rodriguez, seeing if she get that first title shot with a win over Amanda Lemos from the UFC Apex this weekend in Las Vegas, Nevada. And folks, thank y'all for watching another UFC Fight Night preview and predictions with Amanda Lemos and Marina Rodriguez in the main event. If you have not yet, though, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. We'll be back again next week for the pay-per-view from MSG. And folks, thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy the video, and Mamba forever.